The laughter of her daughter still echoed in Victoria's ears as she drove home from Ashley's place that afternoon. They had spent hours talking about Ashley's plans to start trying for a baby with her husband. Victoria couldn't help but smile at the thought of becoming a grandmother. At 42, she wasn't exactly old, but the idea of a little one calling her grandma filled her heart with warmth. These moments with Ashley always felt like sunshine, a bright spot in her otherwise predictable life. The autumn air carried a hint of crispness as Victoria pulled into her driveway. Marcus's car wasn't there yet, which wasn't surprising. Her husband of 15 years had been working late more frequently over the past few months. The investment firm where he served as a senior advisor had apparently been swamped with new clients, or so he claimed. Victoria parked and grabbed her purse, noticing Marcus had left his other car. The silver sports car he adored more than seemed reasonable, parked haphazardly in the driveway. Keys in the ignition again, she muttered to herself, shaking her head. Marcus had a bad habit of leaving his spare set of keys in the car, despite her constant reminders about how dangerous that was. Victoria opened the driver's side door to retrieve them, and that's when she saw it. The small bottle had rolled out from beneath the passenger seat when she opened the door. At first glance, she thought it might be hand sanitizer or some kind of car cleaner, but when she picked it up, the label made her stomach clench into a tight, painful knot. Personal lubricant, and not just any kind. The expensive, fancy type from that specialty shop downtown. Victoria's hand trembled slightly as she held the bottle. Her mouth went dry. The world around her seemed to slow down, the gentle rustle of autumn leaves suddenly deafening in her ears. This wasn't car maintenance equipment. This wasn't something Marcus would need for work. This was intimate. This was hidden. This was betrayal in a small plastic bottle. "No," she whispered, her voice hollow in the empty car. "No, no, no." But deep down, Victoria knew. This bottle confirmed what her intuition had been whispering for months. The late nights, the sudden business trips, the emotional distance, the way he no longer reached for her in bed. All the little changes that she had desperately tried to ignore now crystallized into a sickening reality. For a moment, she considered marching into the house, packing a bag, and leaving. Another part of her wanted to wait for Marcus, confront him with the evidence, and watch him try to explain it away. But as the initial shock began to subside, a cold clarity took its place. Victoria had always prided herself on being level-headed, even in crisis. She wouldn't act rashly. Not yet, she decided, slipping the bottle into her purse. Not until I know everything. She locked the car and walked toward the house, her posture straight, her movements deliberate. On the outside, she appeared composed, but inside her mind was racing, formulating a plan. If Marcus was cheating, and the evidence in her purse strongly suggested he was, she wanted to know who with, for how long, and just how deep this betrayal went. Victoria entered their spacious suburban home, the one they had chosen together when Ashley left for college. It had always felt like their sanctuary, a place they had built together. Now it felt like a beautifully decorated lie. She placed her purse on the kitchen counter and poured herself a glass of red wine, taking a long, slow sip. The house phone rang, startling her. Victoria glanced at the caller ID. It was Marcus. "Hello?" she answered, amazed at how normal her voice sounded. "Hey, babe. I'm going to be late again tonight. We've got that big Hamilton account, and the numbers just aren't adding up." His voice sounded strained, almost rehearsed. Victoria took another sip of wine. "That's fine. How late do you think you'll be?" "Probably not until after 9. Don't wait up for dinner." "All right. I was just at Ashley's anyway. She and Tom are planning to start trying for a baby." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Wow, that's great. We can talk about it tomorrow, okay? I've got to run." The line went dead before Victoria could respond. She stared at the phone for a long moment. Any other day, news about their only daughter planning for a child would have warranted more than a rushed dismissal. another piece of evidence to add to the mounting pile. Victoria finished her wine and made a decision. She wouldn't confront Marcus. Not yet. She would gather evidence, confirm her suspicions, and then decide how to proceed. The numbness she felt now would eventually give way to pain, she knew. But for now, it was protecting her, allowing her to think clearly. She went to her home office and opened her laptop, pulling up their phone records online. Marcus had his own cell plan for work, but their home phone and her cell were on a shared account. She scrolled through the call history, looking for patterns, repeated numbers. Nothing stood out immediately, but Victoria was just getting started. Next, she logged into their joint bank account. Marcus maintained a separate account for his work expenses, but they shared finances for the household and personal spending. Again, she looked for unusual transactions, dinners at restaurants they'd never been to together, hotel charges, unexplained cash withdrawals. A pattern began to emerge. Withdrawals of $300 every Friday for the past 2 months. Victoria's jaw tightened. Friday was supposed to be Marcus's late night at the gym. He always came home sweaty and exhausted, claiming he'd had a great workout. Had that been a lie, too? $300 was a lot of money to withdraw weekly. Was he paying someone? Buying gifts? The sound of the garage door opening jolted Victoria from her investigation. She quickly closed the browser tabs and shut her laptop. A glance at the clock showed it was only 7:30, much earlier than Marcus had said he'd be home. She moved to the kitchen, grabbing a cookbook and pretending to flip through it as Marcus entered. He looked surprised to see her. "You're back early," she said casually. "Yeah, Hamilton called to reschedule. Lucky break." He loosened his tie and gave her a quick peck on the cheek. "Did you eat?" Victoria noticed he smelled of cologne, not the one she had given him for Christmas, but something different, sharper. Another red flag. "Not yet. I was just deciding what to make." Marcus opened the refrigerator, his back to her. "Don't bother cooking for me. I grabbed something on the way home." "At that new Italian place?" Victoria asked innocently. Marcus turned, his expression carefully neutral. "No, just a sandwich from the deli." Victoria nodded, though she knew he was lying. The receipt from Giovanni's was sticking out of his jacket pocket. She could see the edge of the distinctive red logo. That night, as Marcus showered, Victoria lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the bottle of lubricant still in her purse downstairs. She wouldn't cry. Not yet. First, she needed a plan. The next morning, after Marcus left for work, Victoria called in sick to the accounting firm where she worked as a financial manager. This wasn't a day for spreadsheets and client meetings. This was a day for surveillance. She dressed casually in jeans and a nondescript blouse, pulled her dark hair into a ponytail, and donned a pair of sunglasses. Then she drove to Marcus's office and parked across the street, where she could see the entrance but wouldn't be easily spotted. Victoria had never imagined herself doing something like this, staking out her own husband like a private investigator, but desperate times called for desperate measures. Hours passed with no sign of Marcus leaving the building. Victoria was beginning to think her plan was flawed when, at 12:15, she spotted him exiting the building with a woman she didn't recognize. The woman was younger, maybe 30, with long blonde hair and a figure-hugging dress. They weren't touching, but they were standing closer than colleagues typically would, laughing at something the woman had said. Victoria's heart pounded as she watched them walk to a nearby restaurant. Through the window, she could see them being seated. Marcus pulled out the woman's chair for her, a courtesy he had long stopped extending to Victoria. As they settled in, the woman reached across the table and touched Marcus's hand briefly. The gesture was intimate, casual in a way that spoke of familiarity. Victoria took out her phone and snapped several photos. Then, hands shaking slightly, she sent Marcus a text. "Working late again tonight?" She watched through the restaurant window as Marcus checked his phone, frowned slightly, and typed a response. A moment later, Victoria's phone chimed with a new message. "Yeah, another late one. Don't wait up." Victoria stared at the message. a strange calm settling over her. Now she knew for certain. The question was, what would she do about it? As she watched her husband laughing with his mistress, a plan began to form in Victoria's mind. She thought of the lubricant bottle in her purse, and for the first time since making her discovery, Victoria smiled. It wasn't a warm smile, but one of cold determination. If Marcus wanted to play games, she would show him just how creative she could be. After all, she had always been the problem solver in their relationship, and right now, she had a very specific problem that needed solving. Victoria started her car and drove to the hardware store. As she walked through the aisles, her plan solidified. She wasn't going to just leave Marcus. She wasn't going to just confront him. No, she was going to make sure he and his mistress would have a night they would never forget. For all the wrong reasons. Victoria stood in the checkout line of the hardware store, the small tube of super-strength adhesive weighing heavily in her hand. The young cashier barely glanced at her purchase, completely unaware of its intended purpose. If he had known what Victoria was planning, perhaps he would have given her a second look. "Have a nice day, ma'am," he said, handing her the receipt. "Oh, I intend to," Victoria replied with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Back in her car, Victoria carefully opened both containers, the lubricant she'd found in Marcus's car and the newly purchased adhesive. With steady hands, she transferred the contents of the adhesive into the emptied lubricant bottle, making sure to leave enough of the original product around the rim to maintain the scent and appearance. The task required precision, the kind of attention to detail she'd always prided herself on in her accounting work. When she was finished, the bottle looked completely untouched, innocently holding its dangerous new contents. "Let's see how close you two really want to get," she murmured, screwing the cap back on. Victoria drove home, her mind clear despite the turmoil of emotions threatening to overwhelm her. 15 years of marriage, reduced to this moment of calculated revenge. She hadn't been perfect, but she'd been faithful, supportive, loving. She'd believed Marcus when he said, "Till death do us part." Oh, what a fool she'd been. The house was empty when she arrived, just as she expected. Victoria went straight to the garage where Marcus's prized silver sports car was parked. She opened the passenger door and carefully placed the doctored bottle back where she had found it, partially hidden under the seat, but positioned so it would be easily accessible when needed. With that task completed, Victoria moved on to the next phase of her plan. She needed to create an opportunity for Marcus to use the car and the lubricant with his mistress. She needed to be away from home, or at least appear to be. Victoria called Ashley. "Hey, Mom, I was just thinking about you," her daughter answered cheerfully. "Hi, sweetie. I was wondering if I could come stay with you this weekend." Victoria kept her voice light, betraying none of the emotions churning inside her. "Of course. Is everything okay? You sound a little off." Victoria hesitated. She hadn't planned on telling Ashley about her father's infidelity yet, not until she had executed her plan and decided what she wanted to do about her marriage. But Ashley had always been perceptive, especially when it came to her mother. "I'm fine. Just need a little girl time. How about I come over Friday afternoon? We can have dinner, talk more about those baby plans of yours." "That sounds perfect. Tom's going fishing with his dad, so it'll be just us girls. I'll see you Friday then." "Love you, honey." "Love you too, Mom." Victoria ended the call, feeling a twinge of guilt for not being completely honest with her daughter. But she would tell Ashley everything soon enough. Right now, she needed to focus on setting her trap. The next step was to make sure Marcus knew she would be gone for the weekend. At dinner that night, Victoria casually mentioned her plans to visit Ashley. "That sounds nice," Marcus said, barely looking up from his plate. "I've got a bunch of work to catch up on anyway." "I'm sure you do," Victoria replied, taking a sip of her water. "I'll leave Friday afternoon and be back Sunday evening." Marcus nodded, already reaching for his phone as it buzzed with a new message. Victoria noticed how his expression softened as he read whatever was on the screen. Once, he had looked at her that way. The next day, Victoria took her surveillance a step further. While Marcus was in the shower, she quickly checked his phone. He had recently started keeping it locked, another red flag she had ignored. But Victoria knew his passcode. It was Ashley's birthday, a detail that now felt like a mockery of their family. She found what she was looking for almost immediately. A text conversation with someone saved simply as M in his contacts. Victoria didn't need to guess who M stood for. Melody. The messages confirmed everything: plans to meet, intimate exchanges, complaints about having to be discreet. And there it was, a message from Marcus, sent just after Victoria had mentioned her weekend plans. House to ourselves this weekend. She's visiting our daughter Friday through Sunday. The response came moments later. Can't wait to have you all to myself. Victoria felt sick, but pushed the feeling aside. She returned the phone to exactly where Marcus had left it and went downstairs to make coffee, her mind racing with the final details of her plan. Thursday morning, Victoria went shopping. She purchased several tiny wireless cameras with her personal credit card, making sure they wouldn't appear on any statement Marcus might see. That afternoon, while he was at work, she carefully installed them throughout the house. One in the living room, one in the kitchen, one in the hallway leading to the bedroom, and one in the bedroom itself. She positioned them discreetly, making sure they would capture whatever happened without being easily noticed. Victoria tested the system on her tablet, confirming she could access the video feeds remotely. Everything was working perfectly. She would see exactly what happened in her absence, gathering irrefutable evidence of Marcus's betrayal. But watching wasn't enough. Victoria wanted consequences, wanted Marcus and his mistress to face some measure of the pain they had caused her. The modified lubricant was just the beginning. Friday morning arrived, and Victoria packed an overnight bag as if preparing for her weekend at Ashley's. Marcus had already left for work, with barely a goodbye. The distance between them, once a vague uneasiness, now felt like a gaping chasm. Victoria wondered how long it had been there, how long she had been sharing her life with a stranger. She called the local fire department's non-emergency line. "Hello, I'd like to inform you that I've had some electrical issues at my house," she said politely. "Nothing serious, but if there should happen to be a call from my address this weekend, it's probably just a false alarm from the faulty wiring." "Thank you for letting us know, ma'am," the dispatcher replied. "We'll make a note of it, but we still have to respond to all calls, just to be safe." "Of course, I understand completely. Better safe than sorry." Victoria hung up, satisfied. She wasn't planning to fake an emergency. That would be illegal and potentially dangerous. But she wanted the fire department to be primed for a call from her address, to take it seriously but not be overly alarmed. A small contingency in her evolving plan. At 1 o'clock, Victoria texted Marcus, "Heading to Ashley's now. See you Sunday evening." She waited until he replied. A simple, "drive safe," before gathering her things. But instead of driving to Ashley's, Victoria drove to a small motel about a mile from her house. She checked in under her maiden name, paying cash, and settled in to wait. The motel room was clean but basic. A queen-sized bed, a small desk with a chair, and a bathroom with a shower that dripped slightly. Victoria set up her tablet on the desk, accessing the camera feeds from home. The house was empty, exactly as she had left it. Now all she had to do was wait. At 5:30, Marcus's car pulled into the driveway. Victoria watched on her tablet as he entered the house, immediately loosening his tie and heading for the liquor cabinet. He poured himself a generous scotch and made a phone call, pacing as he spoke. Victoria couldn't hear the conversation, but his animated expressions told her enough. He was excited, eager. By 6:15, Marcus had showered and changed into a casual button-down shirt and jeans. He checked his appearance in the hallway mirror multiple times, fussing with his hair in a way Victoria hadn't seen him do in years. At 6:45, he received a text that made him smile broadly. He replied quickly, then began moving around the house, straightening pillows, lighting candles, opening a bottle of wine to breathe. The scene made Victoria's stomach turn. He was preparing their home for his mistress, with more care than he'd shown for any of their recent anniversaries. At 7:30, the doorbell rang. Victoria held her breath as she watched Marcus open the door. There she was, Melody Foster, even more striking up close than she had appeared from a distance. She wore a form-fitting black dress and carried a small overnight bag. Marcus pulled her into an embrace as soon as the door closed behind her, kissing her in a way he hadn't kissed Victoria in years. Victoria forced herself to keep watching as they moved to the kitchen, as Marcus poured wine, as they talked and laughed intimately. She had expected to feel rage seeing them together in her home, but instead, she felt a strange detachment, as if she were watching a movie about strangers. When they moved toward the bedroom, Victoria knew it was time for the next phase of her plan. She picked up her phone and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? The dispatcher asked. Yes, hello, Victoria said, making her voice sound panicked and slightly breathless. I think there's a fire at my neighbor's house. I can see smoke coming from the windows. What's the address, ma'am? Victoria gave her own address, then quickly added, I have to go now. I'm going to check if anyone's inside, and hung up before the dispatcher could ask for her name or any other details. Back on her tablet, Victoria watched as Marcus and Melody entered the bedroom. She couldn't see everything from the angle of the camera, but she could see enough to know that her plan was progressing exactly as she had hoped. Melody reached into her overnight bag and pulled out several items, including what appeared to be a silk scarf. Marcus dimmed the lights, leaving the room in semi-darkness. Victoria picked up her phone again and sent Marcus a text. Just checking in. Made it to Ashley's safely. Hope you're not working too hard. On the tablet, she saw Marcus glance at his phone, then quickly set it aside without responding. He was too preoccupied with his guest to maintain his charade. Victoria settled back in her chair, a cold smile playing on her lips. She imagined the scene that would unfold in the darkness of her bedroom. The moment when Marcus or Melody would reach for the doctored lubricant, the initial sensation that would seem normal, followed by the gradual realization that something was very wrong, that they were stuck together in the most intimate and embarrassing way possible. And then, just as they would be panicking, trying to figure out what to do, the fire trucks would arrive, sirens blaring, lights flashing. The ultimate humiliation. Victoria took a deep breath. Soon, very soon, her husband would learn that betrayal had consequences, and she would be watching every mortifying moment of his downfall. The minutes ticked by with excruciating slowness as Victoria watched the scene unfold on her tablet. The camera angle in the bedroom wasn't ideal. She had placed it discreetly on a bookshelf, providing a view of most of the room, but not capturing every detail. Still, she could see enough. Marcus and Melody had moved to the bed, their silhouettes visible in the dim lighting. Victoria observed with detached fascination as her husband of 15 years caressed another woman in their marital bed. The bed they had chosen together when they moved into this house, the bed where they had once whispered dreams to each other in the darkness. Victoria's phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Working on some reports. Don't worry about me. She stared at the message, then at the tablet screen showing the reality of his work. The audacity of his lies fueled her resolve. On the screen, Melody was reaching into her bag again. Victoria leaned forward, her heart pounding. This was it. The woman pulled out what was unmistakably the lubricant bottle from Marcus's car, the one Victoria had so carefully prepared. They must have brought it in from the car earlier, or perhaps Melody had found it and assumed it was hers. Come on, Victoria whispered to the screen. Use it. As if hearing her command, Marcus took the bottle from Melody's hand. The couple exchanged words that Victoria couldn't hear, followed by laughter. Then, in the dimness of the room, Marcus opened the cap. Victoria held her breath. The adhesive would feel similar to the lubricant at first. Slick, wet. They wouldn't notice anything wrong immediately. It would take about 45 seconds for the chemical reaction to begin, for the adhesive to start bonding skin to skin. On the tablet, Victoria could see that things were progressing rapidly between Marcus and Melody. They were fully engaged now, oblivious to the trap they had fallen into. Victoria wondered exactly when they would realize something was wrong. Would it be a gradual awareness or a sudden panic? Her answer came moments later, when Melody's body suddenly stiffened. She said something to Marcus, her voice urgent even though Victoria couldn't make out the words. Marcus tried to move away, but appeared to be struggling. Confusion turned to alarm as they both began to realize their predicament. Victoria watched as they tried to separate, their movements becoming increasingly frantic. Melody's voice rose high enough for Victoria to hear fragments through the tablet's speakers. "Stuck! I can't! What did you—" Marcus's response was a mixture of confusion and panic. "I don't know. It's not. Something's wrong." Their distress might have been comical if the betrayal behind it hadn't been so painful. Victoria felt a grim satisfaction seeing them struggle, but it was hollow, providing no real healing for the wound their affair had inflicted. Just then, the distant wail of sirens penetrated the quiet of the motel room. Victoria checked the time. The fire trucks were right on schedule. She turned up the volume on her tablet to better hear what was happening. The sirens grew louder on the video feed. Marcus and Melody froze, their panicked struggling momentarily suspended as they registered the approaching emergency vehicles. Are those sirens?" Melody asked, her voice strained. "Shit!" Marcus tried again to pull away from her, but they remained firmly stuck together. "Why are there fire trucks coming here?" The flashing red and blue lights became visible through the bedroom window, illuminating their horrified expressions. The sirens stopped directly outside the house. "Oh my God!" Melody moaned. "Someone's here! We need to!" "We can't exactly hide like this," Marcus snapped. His face had turned a deep shade of red that was visible even in the dim lighting. "Just let me think." But there was no time to think. The doorbell rang, followed by loud knocking and muffled voices calling out, "Fire department! Is anyone home?" Marcus and Melody looked at each other in absolute horror. They were trapped, both literally stuck together and figuratively caught in the most compromising position imaginable. "We have to answer," Marcus said finally. "They'll break down the door if we don't." What followed was a desperate scramble as they tried to make themselves somewhat presentable while remaining attached to each other. Marcus managed to partially wrap a sheet around them, creating a makeshift covering that did little to disguise their predicament, but provided minimal modesty. Their awkward shuffle toward the front door was painfully slow. Victoria watched, transfixed, as they struggled down the hallway, Marcus half carrying, half dragging Melody along with him. Every movement seemed to cause them pain, suggesting the adhesive had created a strong bond. When they finally reached the front door, Marcus took a deep breath before opening it just enough to peer out. The camera in the living room captured 3 firefighters standing on the porch, fully geared up. "Sir, we received a call about a possible fire at this address," the lead firefighter said, his professional demeanor faltering slightly as he took in Marcus's disheveled appearance and the strange way he was positioned behind the door. "There's no fire," Marcus said, his voice strained. "Everything's fine. Must have been a mistake." The firefighter frowned. "We still need to check the premises, sir. Standard procedure when we receive a call." "That's really not necessary," Marcus insisted. "As you can see, there's no smoke, no fire. Everything's fine." But the firefighters weren't leaving. The lead firefighter's expression hardened slightly. "Sir, we need to enter the home and confirm there's no fire hazard. It's protocol." Marcus looked like he might argue further, but at that moment, Melody lost her balance slightly, causing them both to stumble. The door swung open wider, revealing their predicament to the firefighters. The 3 men on the porch froze, their professional training momentarily abandoned as they processed the bizarre scene before them. Marcus and Melody stood partially wrapped in a sheet, clearly stuck together in an intimate position that left little to the imagination. The lead firefighter recovered first, clearing his throat and making a valiant attempt to maintain his professional demeanor. I see you have a situation here." One of the younger firefighters turned away, his shoulders shaking with barely suppressed laughter. The third simply stared, mouth slightly open. Marcus's face was now a shade of crimson Victoria had never seen before. "We had an accident," he managed to say. "With some adhesive." "I see," the lead firefighter said, his voice carefully neutral. "Do you require medical assistance?" Melody had buried her face against Marcus's shoulder in mortification. "Yes," she whispered. "Please, help us." The lead firefighter nodded. All business now, despite the absurdity of the situation. "I'll radio for an ambulance. This isn't something we're equipped to handle." As he stepped away to make the call, the younger firefighter, who had been suppressing his laughter, finally lost control, coughing loudly to cover a snort. The third firefighter still seemed too shocked to react. "Do you mind if we come in to confirm there's no fire hazard?" the third firefighter finally asked, his voice cracking slightly. "Fine," Marcus said through gritted teeth. "Just make it quick." The firefighters entered, carefully averting their eyes from the couple as they performed a cursory check of the house. Victoria watched them move through the rooms, wondering if they would notice the cameras, but they were focused on checking for fire hazards, not spotting surveillance equipment. "No sign of fire or smoke," the lead firefighter reported when they returned to the living room. "The ambulance should be here shortly. They'll take you to Memorial Hospital. The emergency department there should be able to help with your adhesion issue." Marcus nodded stiffly, clearly eager for the firefighters to leave, but the lead firefighter hesitated. "Sir, if you don't mind my asking, how exactly did this happen?" Marcus opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. There was a mix-up with some products." The firefighter nodded slowly. "I see. Well, these things happen. Though I have to say, in my 15 years on the job, this is a first." Victoria couldn't suppress a smile at Marcus's humiliation. The firefighters' reactions were better than she could have hoped for. Professional enough to provide help, but human enough to be visibly flustered by the situation. The wail of an approaching ambulance added a new layer to the cacophony of embarrassment. Soon, Marcus and Melody would have to face even more strangers in their compromised state. As the ambulance pulled up outside, Victoria's phone rang. She checked the caller ID. It was Ashley. For a moment, Victoria considered not answering. She wasn't supposed to be sitting in a motel room spying on her husband. She was supposed to be at her daughter's house. But she couldn't ignore Ashley. She paused the tablet feed and answered. "Hi, honey," she said, trying to sound normal. "Mom, where are you? I've been waiting for hours. I thought you'd be here by now." Ashley sounded worried. Victoria closed her eyes, momentarily overcome with guilt. In her focus on revenge, she had forgotten to call Ashley to change their plans. "I'm so sorry, sweetie. Something came up with your father. I should have called." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Is everything okay? Are you and Dad fighting?" Victoria sighed. Ashley was perceptive, always had been. "It's complicated, honey. I promise I'll explain everything soon. Can I come over tomorrow instead?" "Of course, but, Mom, you're scaring me a little. What's going on?" "Nothing for you to worry about right now," Victoria assured her. "Your father's just having a sticky situation." After promising Ashley again that she would explain everything the next day, Victoria hung up and returned to the tablet feed. The paramedics had arrived and were assessing the situation with admirable professionalism, though one of them had to step outside briefly. Victoria suspected to compose himself. Getting Marcus and Melody onto the stretcher was a logistical challenge that required all 4 emergency responders working together. The couple was still stuck in an intimate embrace, making traditional transportation impossible. Eventually, they managed to position them on their sides on a single stretcher, covered with a blanket that did little to disguise the nature of their predicament. As they were wheeled out to the ambulance, Marcus's phone rang. Victoria watched on the tablet as he glanced at it, then silenced it without answering. A moment later, her own phone lit up with a call from him. She let it go to voicemail. Almost immediately, a text came through. In a meeting. Can't talk now. Victoria laughed out loud at the absurdity of his lie. Even now, being wheeled into an ambulance while literally stuck to his mistress, Marcus was maintaining his charade. She wondered what story he would invent to explain this incident to her when she supposedly returned from Ashley's on Sunday. With Marcus and Melody on their way to the hospital, Victoria's surveillance feed showed only an empty house. She closed the tablet app and leaned back in the motel chair, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had fueled her through the planning and execution of her revenge was wearing off, leaving behind a bone-deep weariness. What had she really accomplished? Yes, she had humiliated Marcus and his mistress. Yes, she had gathered irrefutable evidence of his infidelity. But the hollow feeling in her chest remained. 15 years of marriage had disintegrated, and no amount of revenge could rebuild what had been lost. Victoria lay down on the motel bed, not bothering to change out of her clothes. As she stared at the water stain on the ceiling, she thought about what came next. The marriage was over. That much was clear. But her life wasn't. She was 42 years old, financially stable, with a daughter who loved her, and a career she had put on the back burner for too long. Perhaps there was freedom to be found in this ending. Perhaps, once the pain subsided, she would discover parts of herself that had been overshadowed by being Marcus Reynolds's wife. With that thought providing a small measure of comfort, Victoria closed her eyes. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, telling Ashley the truth, confronting Marcus, beginning the process of untangling their lives. But for now, she allowed herself to rest, secure in the knowledge that while her husband was stuck in a hospital with his mistress, she was already beginning to break free. Victoria woke early the next morning, her neck stiff from the motel's thin pillow. For a brief, merciful moment, she didn't remember why she was there. Then reality crashed back. The lubricant bottle, the cameras, Marcus and Melody stuck together, the firefighters, the ambulance. Her elaborate revenge played out exactly as planned, yet the satisfaction she'd anticipated felt hollow. She checked her phone. 3 missed calls from Marcus, all from the previous night, and 1 text message sent at 3:16 in the morning. Working late, staying at office, see you Sunday. Victoria stared at the message, almost impressed by his commitment to the lie. Even after everything that had happened, he was still trying to maintain his facade. She wondered what story he would tell when they finally faced each other. What explanation could possibly account for an emergency room visit for 2 people stuck together in the most intimate way? She opened the tablet and checked the house cameras. Everything was quiet, undisturbed. No sign of Marcus or Melody. They must still be at the hospital, or perhaps they had gone somewhere else after their medical emergency. Victoria found she didn't really care where they were. The important thing was that they weren't in her home. After a quick shower, Victoria checked out of the motel and drove to Ashley's apartment. She had promised her daughter an explanation, and it was time to deliver. The weight of what she needed to say sat heavy in her chest. Ashley had always adored her father. This would hurt her, and Victoria hated being the bearer of such painful news. Ashley lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a newer development about 40 minutes away. The complex was well maintained, with flower boxes hanging from balconies and a small playground in the central courtyard. Victoria parked and took a deep breath before getting out of the car. This wouldn't be easy. Ashley opened the door before Victoria could knock, concern etched across her features. At 26, she was the perfect blend of both her parents, Victoria's dark hair and eye shape, Marcus's nose and determined chin. Seeing her now, Victoria felt a pang of regret. The revenge she'd orchestrated against Marcus would inevitably affect their daughter, too. "Mom," Ashley said, pulling her into a tight hug. "What's going on? You scared me yesterday." Victoria returned the embrace, drawing strength from her daughter's warmth. "Let's sit down, honey. I have some things to tell you." They settled in Ashley's small living room. On a comfortable sofa, Ashley and her husband Tom had purchased second-hand and reupholstered themselves. Victoria had helped them with the project, spending a weekend teaching Ashley how to properly stretch fabric and secure it with a staple gun. The memory now seemed to belong to another lifetime, before she knew about Marcus's betrayal, before everything changed. "Is it Dad?" Ashley asked quietly. "Are you two having problems?" Victoria nodded slowly. "Yes, but it's not what you might think. It's not about disagreements or growing apart or any of the usual things." She took a deep breath. "Your father has been having an affair." Ashley's eyes widened. "What? No. Dad wouldn't." She stopped, the certainty in her voice faltering. "Are you sure?" "I found evidence in his car earlier this week," Victoria said, choosing her words carefully. She wanted to be honest with Ashley but didn't need to share every sordid detail. "And then I followed him and saw him with her." "There's no doubt, honey." Ashley's eyes filled with tears. "How could he do that to you? To us? Who is she?" "Her name is Melody. She's younger, works at his firm. I don't know how long it's been going on." Ashley stood abruptly and paced the small living room. "That bastard," she muttered, wiping angrily at her tears. "After everything you've done for him. After 15 years. Victoria was surprised by the vehemence in her daughter's reaction. She had expected some denial, maybe even blame directed at her. Ashley and Marcus had always been close. "I confronted him," Victoria lied, not ready to reveal the full extent of her revenge scheme. "It didn't go well." Ashley sat back down beside her mother, taking Victoria's hands in hers. "What happens now? Are you going to try to work it out? Counseling or something?" Victoria shook her head. "No, honey. Some things can't be fixed. I'm going to file for divorce." The word hung in the air between them. Divorce. Final, irrevocable. The end of the family unit Ashley had known her entire life. "Where are you staying?" Ashley asked. "You can't go back there. Stay here with me and Tom." "Just for the weekend," Victoria agreed. "I need to figure some things out before I face your father again." Ashley squeezed her mother's hands. "Whatever you need, Mom. We're here for you. And for what it's worth, I think you're making the right decision. You deserve better than this." Victoria felt tears prick her eyes for the first time since discovering the lubricant bottle. Throughout the shock, the surveillance, the planning, and the execution of her revenge, she had remained dry-eyed, fueled by cold determination. Now, faced with her daughter's unwavering support, the emotional dam finally broke. She sobbed openly, letting Ashley hold her as years of pent-up emotions poured out. Not just the pain of Marcus's betrayal, but the slow erosion of their marriage over years, the loneliness she had tried to ignore, the growing suspicion that the man she had married was no longer the man she was living with. "It's okay, Mom," Ashley soothed, stroking Victoria's hair. "Let it out. I'm here." When the tears finally subsided, Victoria felt lighter somehow, as if the weight of her marriage had been pressing on her chest without her realizing it. She wiped her eyes and managed a weak smile. "Some weekend visit this turned out to be," she said. Ashley returned the smile. "Hey, what are daughters for, if not for comforting their moms during marital crises?" They spent the rest of the morning talking, really talking, in a way they hadn't in years. Victoria shared her frustrations and disappointments, the gradual distance that had grown between her and Marcus, the red flags she had ignored. Ashley listened, occasionally offering insights that surprised Victoria with their perception. "You've been unhappy for a while," Ashley observed. "I could tell, even though you tried to hide it." Victoria sighed. "I didn't want to worry you, and I kept hoping things would get better." "That's the thing about hope," Ashley said softly. "Sometimes it keeps us in situations we should leave." Around noon, Victoria's phone rang. It was Marcus. She showed the screen to Ashley, who made a face. "You don't have to answer," Ashley said. Victoria considered letting it go to voicemail, but then decided against it. I should see what he has to say. She answered with a neutral, "Hello?" "Victoria," Marcus said, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. "Where are you?" "At Ashley's, like I told you." "Where are you?" She kept her tone even, betraying nothing of what she knew. There was a pause. "I'm at home. Listen, something came up last night. A medical situation. I had to go to the emergency room." Victoria raised an eyebrow at Ashley, who was watching intently. "Oh? What happened? Are you okay?" "It's complicated," Marcus hedged. "I'll explain when you get home tomorrow." "Actually," Victoria said, making a split-second decision, "I think I'll come home tonight instead. Ashley has some plans with friends, and I don't want to be in the way." Another pause, longer this time. "Tonight? But I thought—" "Is that a problem?" Victoria asked innocently. "No, no problem," Marcus said quickly. The house is a bit of a mess. I wasn't expecting you until tomorrow." "I'm sure it's fine. I'll be home around 6. Victoria ended the call before he could object further. Ashley looked at her questioningly. "You're really going back today?" Victoria nodded. "I need to face him. Get this over with." She didn't mention that she was curious to see what state Marcus was in after his hospital visit, or what explanation he had concocted for his medical situation. They spent the afternoon preparing Victoria for the confrontation. Ashley helped her mother pack, then insisted on making her favorite comfort food for an early dinner. Homemade macaroni and cheese with a crispy breadcrumb topping, just like Victoria used to make for Ashley when she was a child. As they ate, Ashley broached a subject Victoria had been avoiding. "What about Melody? The woman he's seeing?" Victoria set down her fork. "What about her? Do you know if he's still with her? After you confronted him, I mean." Victoria thought about Marcus and Melody being wheeled into the ambulance, literally stuck together. "I doubt it. Things got complicated between them." Ashley frowned. "Complicated how?" Victoria chose her words carefully. "Let's just say they had a falling out, a rather uncomfortable one." Ashley seemed to sense there was more to the story but didn't press. Instead, she asked, "Have you thought about where you'll live after the divorce?" "I'll keep the house," Victoria said with certainty. "I'm the one who decorated it, maintained it. It's more mine than his anyway. He can have the cars. Lord knows he loves them more than anything else." At 5:30, Victoria prepared to leave. She stood in Ashley's entryway, overnight bag in hand, suddenly reluctant to go. The weekend with her daughter had been a refuge, a glimpse of the support system she would need in the difficult months ahead. "Call me as soon as you've talked to him," Ashley insisted, hugging her mother tightly. "And if you need to come back here, day or night, you call. Tom and I have plenty of room." "I will," Victoria promised. "And thank you for everything. I love you, Mom, and I'm proud of you. Standing up for yourself isn't easy, especially after so many years." Victoria kissed her daughter's cheek, then headed for her car. The drive home felt surreal, as if she were heading toward a house that belonged to someone else, to confront a husband who had become a stranger. She pulled into the driveway just after 6. Marcus's regular car was there, but the silver sports car was conspicuously absent. Victoria wondered if he had gotten rid of it already, embarrassed by its association with his humiliating predicament. Taking a deep breath, Victoria grabbed her bag and walked to the front door. She inserted her key, turned the lock, and stepped inside. The house was immaculate, cleaner than it had been in months. The faint smell of lemon cleaner hung in the air. Victoria set down her bag and walked toward the kitchen, where she could hear movement. Marcus stood at the counter, arranging a plate of cheese and crackers. He looked up when she entered, his expression a carefully composed mask of normalcy. "You're home early," he said, as if the past 24 hours had been completely routine. Victoria studied him, noting the slight puffiness around his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. He was wearing long sleeves despite the warm weather, and he moved stiffly, as if in pain. "I thought I'd surprise you," she replied, setting her purse on the counter. "You mentioned a medical emergency? Are you all right?" Marcus's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Just a minor issue. Nothing to worry about. Victoria hummed noncommittally. She moved to the refrigerator and opened it, noticing immediately that it had been thoroughly cleaned and reorganized. "You've been busy. Just thought I'd tidy up a bit," Marcus said, his voice too casual. Victoria closed the refrigerator and turned to face him directly. "Where's the sports car?" The question seemed to catch him off guard. "In the shop. Had some issues with it." "I see," Victoria said. She reached into her purse and pulled out the bottle of lubricant she had taken from his car days earlier. She set it on the counter between them. "And what about this? Any issues with it?" Marcus froze, his eyes fixed on the bottle. The color drained from his face so quickly that Victoria momentarily wondered if he might faint. His mouth opened and closed several times, but no words came out. The plate of carefully arranged cheese and crackers sat forgotten on the counter between them. "Victoria, I can explain," he finally managed, his voice barely above a whisper. "Can you?" Victoria interrupted, her tone eerily calm. "Because I'm very curious what explanation you could possibly have for keeping personal lubricant in your car, especially when you've barely touched me in months." Marcus ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture she had seen countless times throughout their marriage. It used to endear him to her. Now it just reinforced how well she knew the man who had betrayed her. "It's not what you think," he said weakly. Victoria laughed, the sound hollow and humorless. "It's exactly what I think, Marcus. I know about Melody. I know you've been seeing her behind my back. I know you brought her to our home last night." His eyes widened in shock. "How did you—" "How I know isn't important," Victoria said, cutting him off again. "What matters is that I do know. Every sordid detail." She reached into her purse again and pulled out her phone. With a few taps, she brought up a photo of Marcus and Melody at the restaurant, their hands intertwined across the table, smiling at each other with obvious intimacy. "This was taken the same day you told me you were working late," she said, sliding the phone across the counter toward him. "The same day I found this in your car." She tapped the lubricant bottle. Marcus stared at the photo, the last vestiges of his denial crumbling. His shoulders sagged as the weight of his exposed lies settled upon them. "And then there was last night," Victoria continued, her voice deceptively soft. "Tell me, how was your trip to the emergency room?" Marcus's head snapped up, his eyes wide with horror. "You know about that too?" Victoria smiled, a cold expression that didn't reach her eyes. "I know everything, Marcus. I know about the firefighters, the ambulance, the whole humiliating episode. What I don't know is how you plan to explain it to me when I supposedly returned from Ashley's tomorrow." He braced himself against the counter, as if the truth was a physical force threatening to knock him over. "How did you find out? Were you following me?" "Does it matter?" Victoria asked. "The point is, I know. Your little secret is out. Your lies are exposed. So let's stop pretending, shall we?" For a long moment, Marcus said nothing. Victoria could almost see the calculations running behind his eyes as he searched for an angle, an explanation, any way to salvage the situation. It was the same expression he wore when negotiating tough business deals, strategic, assessing, looking for leverage. Finally he sighed, a defeated sound that seemed to deflate him further. "You're right. I've been seeing Melody. It was a mistake, a stupid midlife crisis. It didn't mean anything. 15 years of marriage. And that's your explanation? A midlife crisis?" Victoria's calm finally cracked, her voice rising with indignation. "You brought another woman into our home, into our bed, and you think you can dismiss it as meaningless?" Marcus had the decency to look ashamed, but only briefly. His expression hardened, defensiveness replacing contrition. "What do you want me to say, Victoria? That I was unhappy? That I felt trapped? That I needed something you weren't giving me?" Victoria recoiled, as if she'd been slapped. "So now it's my fault?" "That's not what I said," Marcus backpedaled. "But our marriage hasn't exactly been passionate lately. You're always tired, always distracted. Melody made me feel alive again. Victoria's laugh was bitter. And I suppose your solution was to lie to me for months, rather than having an honest conversation about our problems. Would you have understood? Marcus challenged. Would you have been willing to work on things? Really work on them? Or would you have just gotten defensive like you are now? The accusation stung, but Victoria refused to be deflected. We'll never know, will we? Because you didn't give me that chance. You made the choice to betray me, to humiliate me, to break the vows we made to each other. Marcus's expression softened slightly, sensing an opening. It was wrong, I know that. But people make mistakes, Victoria. Marriages hit rough patches. We could try to work through this. Counseling, maybe. A fresh start. Victoria studied her husband's face. The face she had woken up to for 15 years. The face she had once believed she would grow old with. She searched for any sign of the man she had married, the man who had promised to love and cherish her until death parted them. All she saw was a stranger, manipulative and self-serving. There's something you should know, she said quietly. When I found that bottle in your car, I didn't just put it back. I replaced what was inside. Marcus's brow furrowed in confusion. What do you mean? You replaced. Understanding dawned on his face, followed by horror, then anger. The adhesive. That was you? You did that to us? Victoria nodded, not bothering to hide her satisfaction. Super strength adhesive. The kind that bonds instantly and permanently. I thought it was fitting. If you wanted to be with her so badly, you could really be with her. Do you have any idea what you put us through? Marcus's voice rose with incredulity. We were stuck together for hours. The doctors had to use a special solvent to separate us. We were the laughingstock of the entire hospital. Good, Victoria said simply. Now you know how it feels to be humiliated. Marcus's face contorted with rage. This is insane. You could have seriously injured us. All because, what? Your feelings were hurt? This is exactly the kind of irrational, vindictive behavior that pushed me away in the first place. Pushed you away? Victoria's voice was dangerously quiet. I supported you through law school. I put my career on hold to raise our daughter while you built your practice. I stood by you through every setback, celebrated every victory. I was your partner in every sense of the word. And this is how you repay me? By cheating with a woman 12 years younger, then blaming me for your betrayal? Marcus opened his mouth to respond, but Victoria wasn't finished. You know what pushed you away, Marcus? Your own selfishness. Your inability to honor your commitments when they became inconvenient. Your pathetic need to prove you're still young and virile by sleeping with your junior colleague. She stepped closer to him, her voice steady despite the emotions raging inside her. A real man, a man of integrity, would have ended one relationship before beginning another. A real man would have had the courage to face problems in his marriage instead of sneaking around behind his wife's back. A real man wouldn't blame others for his own moral failings. Marcus stared at her, his anger giving way to something else, perhaps the first genuine remorse he had shown. Victoria, Save it. She cut him off. I don't want your excuses or your apologies. They're worth as little as your wedding vows apparently were. She reached into her purse one more time and pulled out a business card, placing it on the counter next to the lubricant bottle. My lawyer will contact yours on Monday to begin divorce proceedings. I'm keeping the house. You can have your precious cars, though I imagine the silver one might need new upholstery. Marcus picked up the card, his hand trembling slightly. You've already contacted a lawyer? I've had a lot of time to think over the past few days, Victoria replied. While you were busy getting unstuck from your mistress, I was planning my future. A future without you. Something in her tone must have conveyed the finality of her decision, because Marcus didn't argue. He simply stared at the card in his hand, the fight gone out of him. Where will you go? Victoria asked, not out of concern but practicality. Marcus shrugged. A hotel, I guess, until I can find an apartment. You have until tomorrow evening to pack your things, Victoria said. I'll be staying at Ashley's tonight. At the mention of their daughter, Marcus's head snapped up. You told Ashley? Of course I told her. Did you think I would protect your reputation at the expense of my relationship with my daughter? She deserved to know why her family was falling apart. Pain flashed across Marcus's face. How did she take it? How do you think? Victoria's voice was cold. She's devastated that her father is a cheater who destroyed her mother's trust. But she's strong. She'll be fine. We both will. Marcus nodded slowly, resignation settling over him. For what it's worth, I never meant to hurt either of you. Intentions mean nothing, Victoria replied. Actions are what count, and your actions have spoken volumes. She picked up her bag, leaving the lubricant bottle on the counter as a final reminder of his betrayal and her revenge. I'll be back tomorrow evening. Make sure you're gone by then. Without waiting for a response, Victoria turned and walked out of the kitchen, her head held high. As she passed through the living room, memories assaulted her. Christmas mornings with Ashley opening presents under the tree, movie nights cuddled on the sofa with Marcus, dinner parties with friends gathered around the large table. This house had been the backdrop for 15 years of her life, filled with joy and laughter and love. Now those memories were tainted, colored by the knowledge of Marcus's infidelity, but the house itself was still hers. She would reclaim it, remake it, just as she would reclaim and remake her life. Outside, the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the manicured lawn. Victoria got into her car and drove away without looking back. 3 years later, Victoria adjusted her sunglasses as she watched her granddaughter Emma toddle across the playground. At 3 years old, Emma was a bundle of energy and curiosity, her dark curls bouncing as she moved from the slide to the sandbox and back again. Be careful, sweetie, Victoria called as Emma climbed the short ladder to the slide for what must have been the 20th time that afternoon. From the bench where she sat, Victoria could see Ashley watching her daughter with the same mixture of pride and anxiety that Victoria remembered feeling when Ashley was that age. Some things never changed, even as life moved forward in ways she never could have anticipated 3 years ago. The divorce had been finalized quickly, with Marcus offering little resistance to her terms. The house had gone to Victoria, the cars to him, and their savings had been divided equitably. Marcus had moved to Chicago 6 months later, taking a position with a larger firm there. Victoria heard from Ashley that he was still single, his relationship with Melody having ended almost immediately after their adhesive incident. Victoria smiled at the memory of that night, the satisfaction of her revenge plan coming together perfectly. The pain of Marcus's betrayal had faded over time, leaving behind a sense of pride in her own resilience. She had survived, thrived even, rebuilding her life on her own terms. She had thrown herself back into her career, earning a promotion to senior financial manager at her firm. She had renovated the house, erasing the traces of Marcus and creating a space that was entirely her own. And most importantly, she had strengthened her relationship with Ashley, becoming not just a mother, but a friend and confidant. Emma's birth had been the crowning joy of the past 3 years. Being a grandmother was everything Victoria had hoped for, and more. All the love, and none of the sleepless nights. Excuse me, is this seat taken? Victoria looked up to find a man standing beside her bench, gesturing to the empty space. He was around her age, perhaps a bit older, with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Not at all, she replied, sliding over slightly. Thanks. He sat down, keeping a respectful distance. My grandson is the little boy in the red shirt. He's been on that swing for almost half an hour. I'm not sure he'll ever want to leave. Victoria smiled, following his gaze to a boy of about 4 swinging enthusiastically. My granddaughter is the one going down the slide for the millionth time. They have so much energy at that age. That they do, the man agreed. I'm Richard, by the way. Richard Spencer. Victoria Reynolds. She extended her hand, which he shook gently. Are you here often? Richard asked. My son just moved to the neighborhood, so I expect I'll be visiting this playground regularly when I come to see them. At least once a week, Victoria replied. My daughter lives nearby. They fell into easy conversation as they watched their grandchildren play. Richard was a widower, a retired architect, who now taught part-time at the local community college. He was unpretentious and thoughtful, with a dry sense of humor that made Victoria laugh more than once. When Emma finally exhausted herself and came running over for a snack, Victoria introduced her to Richard. This is my friend Richard, she said, the word friend feeling both new and right. Emma regarded him solemnly for a moment before breaking into a dimpled smile. Do you like cookies? Grandma has cookies. Richard laughed. I do like cookies very much. Your grandma is lucky to have such a thoughtful granddaughter. As Victoria handed Emma a cookie from her bag, Richard checked his watch. I should probably rescue my son from swing-pushing duty, he said, standing. It was very nice meeting you, Victoria. You too, she replied, surprised by how much she meant it. Richard hesitated, then asked, I know this might seem forward, but would you like to get coffee sometime? There's a nice cafe just down the street. Victoria felt a flutter of nervous excitement, an emotion she hadn't experienced in years. 3 years ago, the idea of dating again would have seemed impossible. The pain of Marcus's betrayal too fresh, too raw. But now, sitting in the sunshine watching her granddaughter play, the prospect of sharing a coffee with this kind-eyed man seemed not just possible, but appealing. I'd like that, she said, smiling up at him. As Richard walked away to collect his grandson, Victoria felt a sense of contentment wash over her. Life had taken her on an unexpected journey, full of pain and betrayal, but also resilience and growth. She had survived the worst day of her life and emerged stronger, wiser, more herself than she had been in years. And now, as she watched Emma chase a butterfly across the playground, Victoria realized she was ready for the next chapter, whatever it might hold. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And drop a comment below. What city are you watching from? And if your heart tells you to, feel free to leave me a tip on Buy Me a Coffee. Just check the first pinned comment. Thanks for keeping me company and for the coffee, and I'll see you in the next story.